Hello, and good afternoon. Welcome to Thrive Live. We are excited with Energy Inc. We are excited to have you with us today. We have some very special guests that have joined us, that are joining us today. And for this very special podcast, we are launching season three. Can you believe it? Season three of this podcast. And we are working to grow our audience and to really move to impact lives in a very special way using the podcast to address stigma. We're talking to real people about real situations and real solutions. And so today I have with me very special guest, my really good friend and brother, Abdul Rahim Briggs from Project Briggs Incorporated in Washington, D.C. I have my very special administrative assistant, Erin Charlize, coming to us, and also a very special guest who we can kind of see a little blurred, but she's en route to a special World AIDS Day event, but she agreed to join us today. Her name is Evangelist Regina Jefferson, and she is the coordinator for the faith-based initiatives at the Department of Health, DC Health, and helps to coordinate the Places of Worship Advisory Board, where I'm also a co-chair with her on that body. And so today we want to talk about, in preparation in honor of World AIDS Day, we want to just sort of think about and reflect on the last almost 40 years. Can you believe it, Raheem and Regina? Almost 40 years, isn't it, of us knowing about this thing and having the name and calling it what it is. I know that I was about 16 or 17 when I first even heard about it, and really started dealing with it at about 18 and a half. So my name is Reverend Daryl, or Daryl Moak, and I am your host today. My two co-hosts, Tawana and Raven, are not able to be with us today, but they will be back with us during season three. But again, I want to welcome Abdul Rahim Briggs, Evangelist Regina Jefferson, Erin Charlize. You want to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit more about your organization and what you do, Rahim?
Hi, my name is Abdul Rahim Briggs. Everyone knows me as Rahim. I live and work in Washington, D.C. I've been here for over close to 30 years. And so Project Briggs' mission is, we're a progressive, independent, nonprofit organization. Our main focus is support urban projects, cultural events, activities for diverse communities. And one of the key things that we do is we collaborate. And so I'm going to spill the beans a little bit. Energy Inc. and Project Briggs are going to be doing some collaboration. So we're looking forward to doing that in the next year, actually, or in the very near future. But our primary focus is harm reduction, HIV awareness, and other health issues and challenges that conflicts our community. We work on various projects. And our organization is project driven, which means it's Project Briggs. So we tend to work in different areas and different challenges in our community. But the key component of what we do is that we do outreach activities and partnerships to get the word out. And so we kind of just work through those channels. And so that's a little bit about Project Briggs. You can actually go learn more about us at projectbriggs.org to learn more about what we do.
Absolutely. Regina, hey, how are you?
Good day, Reverend Daryl. So good to see you again.
You too, my dear. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do around this area of HIV and AIDS, and particularly your work with the Department of Health and with DC Health and with POAB?
Well, I am so excited to be talking about something that I love. I've been doing this type of work since the 80s. Believe it or not, I know I look amazing to be doing this work since the 80s. But yes, I have been doing faith-based work as well as HIV. When the epidemic started in the 80s, and what I do with the Places of Worship Advisory Board and the faith-based work with the Department of Health is we connect people. and resources to support whole person health in mind, body, and spirit. Well, what is POAB? POAB, the Places of Worship Advisory Board, we are a collective group of Maryland Health Department, Virginia Health Department, DC Health Department. We have community business partners. We have interfaith groups, Muslim, Christian, Hindu, Scientology, Pentecostal, Baptist, Methodist. We have all the different faiths that's connected to us. We're going into our 15th year. That's right. On next year, it will be 15 years that we've been doing this work. And we started out with HIV, working to help to eradicate HIV in the faith communities. And now we're not only working with HIV, but we're doing whole person health in mind, body, and spirit. Because we can't talk about HIV without talking about spirituality. We can't talk about spirituality without talking about relationships. And we can't talk about relationships without talking about family, communities, and the things that affect us in those different ways. I'm excited because this is the work that I love to do. I'm an evangelist and I am a preacher's daughter. So this is all I know. This is all I've been doing. But I am just so happy to be a part of another event that is focusing in on HIV. I'm actually headed to the Kennedy Center right now to see Patty LaBelle and Gladys Knight, and just a fellowship with those who are doing national and local work right now. That's why I have my face painted. So I am so excited doing the work that I'm doing. And I'm going to be, I'm signing off at this time. Thank you. And if you want more information about the places of worship, you can reach us at dc.gov, POAB/POAB, or you can reach me at regina.jefferson@dc.gov, or contact me by phone 202-671-5063. That's 202-671-5063. Thank you and have a quality day.
And we'll be back with you to talk a little bit more with Regina before she goes away completely about this epidemic and what's been happening and what we are doing in the faith communities, particularly the faith communities response right now. Raheem, what are you, and Aaron, go ahead, introduce yourself. I'm sorry, my dear, I didn't mean to skip you.
It is completely okay. I am Aaron Trelease. I am the Chief Administrative Officer of Energy Incorporated, and we have so much that we are doing on this front. We have several programs that we have worked into besides the Thrive Live podcast. We have several different collective programs that work with HIV and mental health and substance awareness, which is such an additional pandemic, but that's for another podcast. We have several different initiatives and working with Project Living or Healthy Living, which is a holistic program for many different reasons, but today we talk about HIV. So on top of everything else and what everybody else is doing, we love to work with other people to make this pandemic certainly less of a pandemic.
Thanks, Aaron, and thanks for that. So, Raheem, we have almost a 15, you've been in DC 30 years, I've been here 50, it'll be 15 years to me in February, and we have almost a completely 15-year history. I think I first met you, you were working with a different organization, and I eventually joined you in that organization, and we were doing some community activities and events, and so we've been doing this together for about 15 years, right? And in this time frame, can you take a moment to reflect back on the last 30 to 35, 40, almost 40 years of the HIV epidemic and the pandemic of HIV, and what changes have you seen in our community, and maybe what do you think needs to still happen?
Well, based on my outreach efforts and being in DC close to 30 years, back in the early 2000s, 1999, I did my very first white attire fair. and it was with us helping us, benefiting us, helping us. Uh, Over that time span between 2019 and 1999 and 2005, 2006 was a huge expansion of the White Attire Fair. And during that time, they didn't have a lot of therapeutics available like you do today. The focus was more on condoms, getting tested. Um, HIV was still somewhat relatively, I wouldn't say relatively new, but we didn't have a lot of access. We didn't have social media back then to really get the word out about HIV. So everything that we had to do back in those days was on the ground, flyers and everything of that nature. And during the time I was coming up, it was almost like a death sentence because we were still learning. And we were still trying to focus on getting the word out to the community. And we would leverage activities such as the White Attire Fair during that time, with the Human Endowment Fund. And so we leveraged those events for testing, getting the word out. Now, fast forward to today, I think one of the concerns that I have is, I'm glad that they have PrEP. I salute that. But I think quote unquote, the shock value isn't there because people are still getting HIV. Is HIV avoidable? Yes, it's 100% avoidable. The question is, why are people still getting infected by HIV? It should be eradicated by now. So I believe in some instances we become desensitized by it. We say safe sex, now people are going wrong. So the attitudes have changed, at least from my perspective, changes. We become a lot desensitized by HIV. And, in this day and age, it should have been eradicated by now. So I think, today the question is, what can we do? What changes are we making? And how can we get people to get tested to undetect it and eradicate HIV? So that's the question. We have the therapeutics, we have social media, TikTok, you have everything. Back then we didn't have any of that. And for whatever reason, we were able to galvanize our community without those tools that we have today. So that's a concern of mine. What are we doing? Are we reaching back at the younger generation to see what their thoughts are? Maybe we can learn something from them. But I think one of the main concerns is just the desensitization of people thinking, hey, they just don't think twice about getting it. I mean, it's amazing.
Well, it's interesting, Raheem, that, I remember back in 1987 when I went away to college and I was on a college campus that there was a little bit of any and everything going on, if you can understand college those days. And I was concerned because there was zero conversation about sexually transmitted infections, particularly HIV.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not being talked about at all. Right. And so I started doing education on my campus. And for one, I had to do more education for myself, do the research, find out information, and then started writing articles in the school paper. Ironically, I didn't have any pushback on that. They just published my articles. But and I spent a lot of time dispelling the myths that were out there at that time. And those myths prevailed into the early 90s. And in fact, we still have some of those myths today in our families and in our communities. You guys know, if you're watching this podcast, there are still families that will disown their children, their loved ones because of their HIV status. There are still people that are afraid to tell people about their HIV status for fear that they will be disowned, dismissed, and poorly treated. The stigma around HIV is still huge. A lot of that has come over the years from what we didn't do as a community and what did happen. And sometimes the things that did happen weren't the best things for us as a collective body, right? But there's so much going on today that's different. We have a whole campaign called U equals U, which means undetectable equals untransmittable. And what does that mean? That means that if you are HIV positive and you take the medication that will get you to a level of being undetectable by our current medical standards, we have come to understand that if you are undetectable and on your medication, you are unable to transmit the virus. That's a huge, huge change. There was never a time before now, before these last 5 to 7, maybe 10 years, where we got to a place where we could say, if you are on your medicine and you're undetectable, you won't pass it on. But here's the kicker. For people that are not positive, we're also able to take a medication, part of the HIV regimen, which is, and it's called PrEP. And that medication will allow you to basically inoculate yourself to prevent you from being able to get the virus at all. So if you're in a relationship with someone who is positive and you're not positive, there's a way for the two of you to protect each other and to make sure that you're safe. Male or female, doesn't matter who you are. The thing is that we learned in the 80s, HIV doesn't care about who you are, it just cares about what you do. Right? And so what you do, how you do what you do is important to us. And so we want to destigmatize this idea that there's something wrong or deficient in people that become HIV positive, that there's something wrong. I have friends that have long-term survivors of HIV from those early days, but I also have friends that aren't with us anymore from those early days and along the way. So hopefully in the next, this year's season of episodes, we'll have a little bit more conversation about HIV, about prevention, about PrEP, and also about PEP. PEP, for those of you that don't know, is PrEP means pre-exposure prophylaxis. PEP, of course, is post-exposure prophylaxis, which means if you feel you've been exposed, you can contact your doctor within, I believe it's a 48 to 72 hour window to say, hey, I think that I've been exposed. We don't want you to wait that long, right? So just go, call your doctor. I think I've been exposed, and they will put you on a regimen for about 28 days that will help to make sure that HIV doesn't have a chance to stay in and connect and get into your system, right? But if you're on PrEP, you should be okay around that. Now, Raheem, you can jump in anytime. That PrEP is not a reason to be frivolous about your own health.
And that's where although I applaud those tools that we have, because that's what PrEP is used for. Obviously you get tested, then your doctor gives you a prescription, because I'm on PrEP, right? So the goal is to make sure that you protect yourself and your partner. So let's say, for example, if your partner's HIV positive or whatever, but if they're undetectable, using PrEP is sort of, at least in my opinion, is like a double protection. You guys are good. And that's, to me, how you actually stop HIV in its tracks. I think, Derek, you and I, we've worked together for a long time. And we, reach into our tool bag of having events and activities and outreach efforts. I think one of the big things that is missing is, we have the programs, but I'd like to see a lot of them pipeline to the grassroots level. I think, to me, in my opinion, that's where the disconnect is. Although I applaud them going to our main service providers like Us Helping Us, Whitman Walker Health, which I hope and pray they continue to get that funding, because we need those organizations in our community. But I also think they should create another avenue for small organizations like Energy Inc., Project Briggs, and other organizations, so we can, because we're definitely in the weeds, we're in the streets, you know what I'm saying? So we're that front line, the line that's in front of the line, that's actually doing the work with little to no resources. So I think, in my humble opinion, I think I like to see more funding. They could be mini grants up to 20,000, 30,000, 40, 50,000. That's a lot of money to organizations like your organization and mine, unrestricted grants, so we can actually do the work. Not so much restricted, but unrestricted grants that we can actually do the work, and we can be more creative, where the larger pool of money goes to organizations, organizations like Us Helping Us and Whitman Walker. That's fine, but they need to have a different line of funding to support organizations that are very much at the grassroots level.
Absolutely. And here's the wonderful thing about PrEP. For those of you that don't know about it, there's a couple of different versions of PrEP. One is a pill that you take every day, and there's another one that is an injection that you take every 6 to 8 weeks. And I actually am on PrEP as well, Raheem, and I'm taking the injection. And I went through the study, so I was a part of the study, both with the pills and then a part of the study with the injection. And so I transitioned to that, and I was in that study. And what they found in the study was that it was so effective that they felt that they ended the study early because they felt it would be unethical to continue to give people a placebo, because some people got placebo, some people got the medicine, knowing that we have something that actually works, that at a 99 point something percent rate, that it was unethical to continue the study. So they can't close the study early and transferred everyone who was willing to onto that method of PrEP. And so there are a couple of different versions. If you really, really just don't like shots, I get the shot in my dorsal area, right at the top of my behind, in the fleshy part. And I happen to have a little piece of fleshy part right
Yeah,
there.
you got a little flesh in there, Daryl.
Just a little piece of fleshy part. And it does it. It's like 2 seconds and it's done. And then I go on with my life, right? And that doesn't mean, though, that if I choose to be sexually active, that I'm not using condoms, that I'm not using other methods of protection as well, because that's also a part of the plan, is to use all of the methods and all the tools that are available to us. Aaron,
I would like to.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I said I would like to learn more about the because in part of my ignorance, and I didn't know that they had the shot version where you can do it 6 months at a time. Because I actually would like that.
It's not 6 months yet. It's that I know of. It's 6 to 8 weeks.
Oh, 6 to 8 weeks. Okay. Yeah. I think I would like that because I mean, you're taking a pill every day. I think someone asked me, about kidneys. You have to really watch your kidneys. This is one of the reasons why you have to keep going back and seeing your doctors, to make sure they can monitor that. You got it. That's something that I keep telling people. You got to go back and see your doctor on a regular basis so they can monitor your kidneys.
So don't take somebody else's medicine and think you're giving yourself PrEP. Don't give yourself some other medical problems. So we are not doing street medication therapy here, right?
No.
So make sure you're seeing a doctor. Listen, I have one of the greatest doctors on the planet, Dr. Theo Hodge, here in Washington, D.C.
Yeah,
he's a research. He's a research doctor and really is an infectious disease specialist. And one of the things that he teaches our community when he comes out to some of our programs, we have a program called a part of the mandate, which in that is a session we call Ask the Doc. And he's often come and will share, direct information to people about health-related concerns and issues. And one of the things that he says is that you really need to have a good relationship with your doctor, and you really need to be able to talk to your doctor and share with them about your whole history, including your sexual history and your sexual activity, so that your doctor can give you the best care. And if you don't have a doctor that you feel you can talk to about your most important stuff in your body, your health, then you don't have the right doctor, right? You need to look for a doctor that you can trust and that you feel confident in and that you feel comfortable with. And you should not be ashamed to talk to your doctor about anything going on in your body around your health, ever.
I think it's very important that, like I have, for me, my primary care is Women Walker Health. I feel comfortable because they're LGBT, and I can be open with my doctor. For me, that's a big plus for me. Used to be back in the day, you really, like you said, you couldn't really open up. You feel like you get judged and everything, and so that's another barrier that I'm glad that those barriers are being broken down or have been broken down. But that's a very important aspect of just finding a doctor that understands and know you. For me, I like LGBTQ doctors. You can tell them everything, and they kind of get it.
So, Aaron, as we're looking in the last few minutes of this before we lose Raheem to another program, World AIDS Day. Tomorrow is World AIDS Day, a celebration. And so what do you hope for your community? You have 2 young sons, right? What do you hope for around HIV that this day allows us to reflect on and think about? What do you hope for the community and for people that you love?
Full disclosure, I had no idea what any of this was. And so before this, I did a little bit of research, and for me, I kind of wish that it was more out there. You know, you do get the stigma, you get the, you know, I grew up in a very religious family, and so anything like that was, you weren't allowed to talk about it, and if you knew anybody who had it, they were shunned. And so I wish that the not even the community, just worldwide, it would be not just, I don't want to say normalized because we want to get rid of it, but I wish it would be something that wasn't so taboo to talk about and judged on whether you have it or not. So for me, and at least for my kids, I wish it was just more out there, because honestly, why do we still have it? And I do agree that it should be something that we don't have anymore, because as far as I'm concerned, as a woman, a lot of people really don't do the protection, because if you're on birth control, why would you do that? And you know, I think the same applies to many of my, you know, my LGBTQ family that I have, that they don't think about it. It's not something that they think about. And so if my boys were to, you know, be a little bit older, obviously, um, I would say talk with your kids when they get to the right age, and to establish an education at a normalized age, not quite, you know, 4 and 10, but start talking about it. Make it something that people talk about, because having that ignorance or having that uneducated, um, especially country that we have, is what leads to the judgment, is what leads to the stigma. And so if we're to eradicate this, if we're to fix this situation, it needs to be normalized to talk about. That would
You
be
know, thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Aaron, for that. You know, one of the, I'll tell you that what little bit I know about Aaron that I'll say on live TV, so to speak, on the podcast, is that Aaron is young enough to be my daughter, and her sons and are young enough to be my grandchildren. And so, for someone who's young enough to be my daughter to not know a lot about HIV in this age and time, who has two small children, that's really saying that somewhere along the way we're still not getting it all right, right? And we still have a lot of work to do to go on. So, but we'll come back to that in a second. But Raheem, I know you got to get ready to jump off and go to something else. So what do you hope for on this World AIDS Day 2022? Before you leave out, what do you hope for that will live beyond this moment?
I want people to know that knowledge is power, and that we're here to support you. We're here to educate you, and we're here to be educated as well. I think that's important. We don't know everything, but our responsibility is to do everything we can to protect you, and that's what I want to go beyond World AIDS Day and into the future. That we're here, we're all learning together.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, President and founder of Project Briggs, Mr. Abdul Rahim Briggs. And we were going to be together again soon. So I know you got to run, but thank you for being here. And we'll catch up and we'll see you on another podcast soon, I hope.
Oh, definitely. And I'll have a lot more time to chat. And thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Daryl, for inviting me today. You guys have a happy World AIDS Day tomorrow, and have a great day today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.
Aaron, you too. Aaron, so you were saying earlier that you didn't know a lot about this, right? Yeah. So let's do a little Q&A kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So ask me, let's do this as if you were people who are watching, who might be like you, who don't know a lot of information, don't have a lot of information. What do you want to know? What have you heard? What do you want to know? Let's talk about it. Let's thrive live in this.
Hey. I guess so. Brief conversation. lasted maybe 5 seconds, not 5 seconds, maybe 3 minutes on the phone with my dad, who knows a lot of people. Asked him, what do I need to know? And one of the first things is, everybody knows how it's transmitted. And I didn't know how it was transmitted. Didn't know. So he told me, and I think that's a big thing to know is, how do you get it? It's not just through, sexual context. It's also through drugs. It's also through you can step on a needle outside and get it. There's so many other ways to get it than what I had initially assumed.
Well, let's clear up a couple of things there, okay? So let's be very specific, since this podcast is going to live beyond us in this moment. So first of all, you can step on a needle and get it, right, outside. Let me tell you why. The reason is because HIV is very vulnerable, and it dies outside of a host. It dies in the air. Okay, so if you're outside and there's a needle or a nail or something, you step on it, the likelihood of it is very, very small. What I mean by that is if someone is injured and there's a lot of blood and there's blood continuously going on in that area, then there's a possibility that you could step in. If you have a cut, that it could, but it's such a small possibility that we don't know anyone that has happened to, right? We also don't know anyone. So there are people that think you can get it from kissing, from saliva. You can't. Again, saliva is another one of those body fluids that's also oxygenated. And so the virus dies in, again, the air or in oxygen. And so now if you have a cut in your mouth and the other person has a cut in their mouth, let's say you both went to the dentist, had a deep cleaning, your mouths are bleeding, and you decide to have a whole passionate embrace in that moment, and you lock lips and everything's going between you two, there's a greater possibility at that point that you could, but that's because there's blood present, right? And the virus lives inside the blood. It can survive inside our lymph nodes and hide there for a while as well. But of course, we're not passing lymph nodes around. So blood, semen, vaginal secretions, and breast milk. Those are the ways that the virus can be transmitted. So from mother to vaginal secretions. So during pregnancy, during the birthing process, right, as well as breastfeeding, right. So sexual intercourse, whether it's oral, anal, vaginal, penile, whatever that might be, right. In the sexual act, if there's a transmission of those body fluids, then there's a possibility to transmit the virus. Again, for those that are just joining us, one of the ways that you can protect yourself if you're positive is to be on your medication and follow your doctor's routine to get you to undetectable. There's a program, it's a whole campaign that we have going on around the U.S. right now called U equals U, which is undetectable equals untransmittable, which means that if you are on your medication and you get to undetectable status, which means that we can't, based on our current instrumentation and medical knowledge, we can't find any trace of the virus in your system. Does not mean a cure. It just means it's so little in your system that it's undetectable, right? That's what that word means. It doesn't mean it's not there. It's undetectable. When you are undetectable, we have medical science that tells us now that you're also untransmittable, meaning you can't pass on a virus that is so low in your system, so undetectable, right? So if you're exchanging anything with those body fluids, so that's why when you talked about drugs, Aaron, that's why the drugs come in, because it's really not just general drugs. It's really intravenous drugs if you're sharing needles, which is one of the reasons why we are doing a lot of work in our community around harm reduction. We want to make sure that we are able to share the ways in which harm reduction can help us in our communities. There's a website you can go to, is harmreduction.org. We talk about different ways that we do, and DC is a harm reduction environment, meaning we're trying to get people, ideally in the world, do we want people to not do things that may put them at risk? Absolutely. But we understand that people are people and they make choices. And so what we rather have you do is make choices to be healthier along the way. So if you're an intravenous drug user, we want you to use clean needles and not share needles, right? And so there are places in the district and places around the country where you can go and pick up needles so that you can use clean needles if you're using our CleanWorks, if you're doing so, right? We also have another one of those ways that we deal with it is through condom usage. We pass out condoms so that people will be able to protect themselves. Condoms and dental dams. Now did you know, Aaron, is a female condom?
I did.
You did? Oh, good. All right. And so there are regular, we call them, I guess, regular condoms or male penis condoms and vagina condoms, right? They don't really call them that, but that's where you put them. So one goes in the penis, one goes in the vagina, right? And it's intended to be a barrier. Now, just so that you know, there are different kinds of condoms out there. Now some condoms are good for protecting against sexually transmitted infections, and some are not. Some are really good just for protecting against pregnancy, like lambskin, right? But lambskin condoms are too porous and they're also way too expensive. But they don't protect against sexually transmitted infections. And here's the kicker. Not only are we need to be concerned about HIV, even if you're undetectable, there are other sexually transmitted infections that will also exacerbate the potential for passing on the HIV virus, like syphilis. And gonorrhea, chlamydia, these things that also create sores or have pus or have other things in them where you could pass something on to someone else, right? We all have heard about monkeypox, and we're not going to jump into monkeypox. I'm not a monkeypox expert yet, but we also want to protect ourselves from other ways that we can get other kinds of transmittable infections, right? Okay. Those are the fluids, right? And that behavior is sexual or any other activity that puts you at risk, like intravenous drug use. But drug use in general is also a way, because people's inhibitions may be down. There may be more kinds of riskier behaviors that happen when you're under the influence of alcohol and drugs. So you may have more sex. You may have sex that's unprotected. You may have sex with multiple partners unprotected because you're not in a state to be concerned about that. So there are ways in which this stuff, continues to be a challenge for us in community, and we want people to have right information. There's nothing to say that you cannot have multiple sex partners, that you can't attend sex parties. You can't do all those things that you want to do. You surely can, but you can also be mindful and find out ways to do them in a way that keeps you healthy and healthier, right? Okay, so
on top of what you were saying, about being mindful and everything, when you want to see a doctor about having that, and sexually transmitted diseases, yes, I get that. But if you're on drugs and you got it from sharing needles, you got it from that kind of thing. A lot of people that I knew a long time ago would not go to a doctor to check on that. They wouldn't think about that because, number one, you don't think about getting HIV from that when you're in the moment, and number two, you're not going to want to go and admit that you were doing it. And so I think that in itself, again, is another stigma of our country. If you do this, you're going to get in trouble, so don't tell anybody.
And that's one of the reasons why we want to really continue to push for people to move beyond stigma, right? How do we move beyond stigma? We move beyond stigma by eliminating judgment, judging other people, by assuming things about people, by stereotyping them, by othering them. Like there's something morally wrong or deficient about you if you're doing these things. None of that is true, right? There are so many social determinants of health that are out there. Poverty is one of them. And so when people are living in states of poverty, they are in greater risk for a variety of health-related challenges that include HIV, that include drug use, that include mental health challenges that go undiagnosed or uncared for, right? Yeah. And so the best way to do that is to love, here's the faith part of our work, right? To just love everybody, right? To just have respect for people, to encourage them to do the right things around their own health and do it by example. If you're doing the right things for your health and the people around you know what you do, you will influence them to follow your lead. right? And without saying you ought to do, should do, could do, would do, we just want to let people know what the possibilities are for them to live healthy and happy lives. It is true that people that become HIV positive are living longer, healthier, and happier lives than ever before during the course of this pandemic. But it is also true that everyone that I know that has HIV would prefer not to have it and would prefer that nobody else gets it. No matter what kind of medications are there, how you can get to undetectable, how you can live a longer and healthier and happier life, you still have something that you don't have to have, right? And so we don't want people to get something that you don't have to get, right? So we're encouraging you to follow the ideas around harm reduction, to take care of yourself, to do the best you can, to give yourself the best possible healthy outcomes for your life as possible. And what other myth or question or thought or do you have or have you had in regards to this area?
I would not so much as questions, but just pointers from my life is more on the stigma of what what it is. Just because
Mhm.
growing up, as my parents were incredibly, they were, mostly Baptist, and, growing up like that, our stigma was that the only people who ever got HIV were gay men. And obviously, that's not true. And so getting the education out there that anybody could get it, and as you said before, you could pass it on to your infant. And I think that in a world of the internet today, that should be something that is easy to be informed by, but nobody really thinks to even look it up. I didn't know that I could have passed it on to my children. I don't have it, and I don't know many people who do, but the odd chance that somebody does, that would be something that I would love to inform somebody who is pregnant, somebody who's had a baby, of that information. And the fact that in so many communities, again, you can't talk about it, so you can't inform anybody about it, even though it's just a Google search away.
Well, and a couple of quick things too. So there are medications that the hospital, that doctors can help to help prevent transmitting for the mom, right? But
Yes.
and it may not mean that she can or cannot breastfeed. That's going to be a choice between her and her doctors, right? But also just know that a lot of times a baby that may be born to an HIV infected mom or from the dad or however that may have worked out, oftentimes children will seem to be positive at first, but within a very short period of time, as they develop their own immune system, aside from their mom's immune system, then they tend to not be. So we found that babies tend to not be infected through the pregnancy in that direct way. But again, this is something to talk about with your doctors, to talk about what the risks are, whether or not a vaginal birth or a C-section is more advised. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not trying to advise you. I'm just telling you, talk to your doctor about these things, right? You know, the other day I got a text. I have a client that we've been working with for a while now. And over time, you know, people continue to tell you more about themselves, right? When they're comfortable.
Yeah.
And this particular day, I got a text, or during the Thanksgiving holiday, this person was having a little bit more difficulty navigating through the holiday, as oftentimes people do right now. So I'm going to tell you, take a quick commercial pause and say, call the people you know in your phone. Don't just text them, but text them is good. Call people, talk to them, check on them, because during these times, it's very hard. And coming out of this or coming through this COVID time frame, we've lost a lot of people. And when you lose people during this time, we've lost people we haven't been able to really get closure on because we couldn't go to funerals and we couldn't do things. So people are struggling, and the holidays are another time when people are really missing the people and their loved ones, or they're just other things about the holidays can be very depressing, even though it's supposed to be a wonderfully fun time. So during the season, this is one of the highest suicide seasons. Please reach out and talk to somebody and share with them and encourage them to seek help if they need it. So, but this person, our client, sent me a message and said, Do you hate me because I was born HIV positive? And first, I didn't know they were HIV positive. So that was new information. But the question wasn't really about them being HIV positive as much as it is, do you hate me because I'm HIV positive? Because I was HIV positive at birth. I was born with HIV, is what they said. And I said, absolutely not. We don't hate you at all. There's nothing to hate about you, right? But it was striking to me that someone is still struggling with that thought that people don't like them because they were born with a disease, a virus. We have a lot of work to do. If we can have people that are in their 20s and 30s still wondering and questioning that. Um, and struggling in life with the variety of things that come from that mental health challenges that come from feeling like that, right? And substance use issues that may come from those feelings and trying to cope with how somebody is feeling. If this is you, if you are feeling sad or depressed or having more of a struggle, any anxiety during this time, we encourage you, if you're in DC, to reach out to 1-888-7-WE-HELP or 202-673-2200. That is the DC helpline. It is open 24/7 for you. They can get you connected to both mental health and substance use disorder support and services. If you're somewhere else, call your local 311. And there is also 988, which is the mental health equivalent to 911. You can dial those numbers from different jurisdictions. 311 often will lead you to a call center in your city or your area or your county that will get you connected to services and to support that you need. You can call, I know you can call the United Way for other kinds of support. They will connect you with organizations in your areas. One of the things United Way has been really great about doing over the years, and no, they're not funding us, but maybe one day they will. But I still want to tell you good information. And so there are other hotlines out there. You can Google hotlines for, there are groups for mental health issues, substance use issues. There are suicide prevention lines that you can get access to and get information on. Reach out to someone. Before we close out, one thing I do want to say is that we have had a tremendous change in the work from the faith community. Aaron, you mentioned your parents were Baptists, and what you learned was that gay men got it, not anybody else, right? And that was a disservice that our churches in the past, our faith institutions, not just churches, but other faith institutions have done in the earlier days. But we have so many churches, so many faith institutions that are doing great work. I'm a part of, as you heard from Regina at the beginning of this podcast, the Places of Worship Advisory Board here in the DMV. It is a joint venture fund primarily housed inside DC Health, but supported and partnered with Maryland Health Department and Virginia Health Department. And so we are doing work, and we were going into our 15th year also of work in this current iteration, and where we come together to do community events, community activities. We do education programs, and we send speakers out if you ask for us to come and talk to your faith community from a faith community perspective. We don't tell you what to believe or how to believe it. What we do tell you is what to understand about the truth about related issues so that you can share good health information with your faith community. What you do with it, how you encourage people to act on that information is within your theology and the work that you do. And we don't deign to tell you how that ought to be, but we do want to make sure you have good, healthy information that can empower people to have stronger and healthier lives. We are so glad that you joined us today for Energy Inc.'s Thrive Live programming. We thank Regina Jefferson for being here earlier, for Raheem Briggs from Project Briggs for being here with us as well, Aaron from Energy Inc., and myself with Energy Inc. We are glad. Thank you, Aaron, for joining us today and sharing your thoughts and your insight. And for you all that are out there, stay tuned, like us on our channel, so that you can find out when we are going live again, you can like us on our Facebook channel or like us on our YouTube channel. We will be going live again very, very soon. And as we launch season 3 today, we take a moment to just honor the lives of those that we have lost to the HIV pandemic over the last almost 40 years and more, because there was a time when we didn't know what it was and people were dying from something that we didn't have a name for. So if we could, as we close out this podcast, we're going to turn our cameras off and we are going to just take a moment of silence in honor of those folks who are not with us at this time. Thank you so much for being here today. We wish you a wonderful, wonderful World AIDS Day, and take care.